a year since we had the first ministerial meeting on tiger conservation. The focus is on implementation. And as Steve just said, we have embarked on a very challenging task. It's multi-sectoral, involving crime prevention organizations, conservationists, community developers, infrastructure. It's multi-country, at least 13 TRCs are involved, and it's multi-partner. And there have been researchers who have studied these kind of challenges, and they have, Andy circulated a paper to the team the other day, identified what are the 5 factors of success when you venture into these very challenging assignments. And one common feature is that you need a steady process by which we as individuals, working to our own individual agenda, working inside institutions who have their own institutional agenda, can gradually align the institutional objectives, the individual objectives, to the objectives of the shared agenda. And I think this process since Kathmandu of periodically coming together and thinking about the past, thinking about the future, I see as this process by which we as individuals sitting in different institutions gradually align our own objectives with that of the global agenda. Now, implementation is a huge challenge. And before we kind of do what Hart's asked me to do, is to talk about the next year, let's just relish for a moment the few successes that we've achieved in the year of the tiger. I hope this will do the trick. Well, there are some interesting photographs there of Mr. Zelik and Mr. Putin. But the real success, as Minister Suvit mentioned, is the sense of ownership that we've all developed. It's called the GTRP, a Global Tiger Program, but really it is built on very customized, very unique national programs and priorities put together into a common framework. And not only do we have a strong sense of ownership amongst the TRCs and our partners, but we also have succeeded in this last 1 year to have our heads of government of this TRC sign on to a declaration that embodies all the best practices, the good practices that we would like to see implemented if we're going to have a successful conservation effort on tiger landscapes and on tigers. We had celebrities there, starting from Mr. Putin himself, but others from Hollywood and Bollywood and you name it. And the word is out. In fact, those who monitor environmental events put the Tiger Summit as one of the top 10 environmental events of 2010. And the only point I'm trying to make is that the global awareness that the tiger has created, not just for tiger per se, but for the landscapes and the values that they bring, and for wildlife in general, is not not a mean achievement. Technically, we do have resources that were nominally committed. It's going to be an effort to make sure that these, in fact, do get delivered and are applied to the priorities that are enunciated by the TRCs through their NTRPs. But the process certainly is backed up in this hard economic times by people willing to put money behind the goals. I think the most important, in my view, achievement of our process so far has been that we are embarked on a process of mutual accountability. There is no global superstructure which is telling us what to do, what not to do. I mean the tiger community, particularly the TRCs and their supporters, we are basically setting up our goals, setting up our actions, and holding ourselves mutually accountable to accomplish these goals. And that's a very different paradigm, and hopefully this process keeps us all on our toes, trying to do the best that we can, rather than fulfill some requirements of a global superstructure. And implementation, again, was a thorny issue when we started out a year ago. And I think, as Mr. Suvit said, the point is to maintain the momentum, not get lost in institutional rivalries. And therefore, the process that we have had for the last 1 year to move us forward in this process of knowledge harvesting, action planning, and mutual accountability continues. And we will be working with GTF, an institution that exists in paper, needs to achieve much more to try and build a longer-term arrangement for institutional support. The 3 dimensions going forward in terms of implementation are, first, the national dimension. Every country in their NTRP puts the highest priority to maintaining political will. And political will comes from a very complex process, but the most important part of it is to understand the value of what you're trying to protect, so that when there are contravening interests impinging on protecting that value, you have a good set of answers why that value is worth protecting. We have already had references to building national implementation capacity. Every country is in a different stage. Every country puts first emphasis to making sure they have in-country institutional mechanisms, whether it is prime ministerial managing committees or whether dedicated institutions to protect wildlife, to build that institutional capacity so that we can get on and do the job on the ground. And similarly, building policy support for some tough decisions, to leave core areas intact, to build connectivity, as Thailand is doing, between important protected areas, to strengthen the front lines where the real action takes place. This policy support needs to be built at the national level. And finally, there are projects being developed left and right by all our partners to participate actively in those project developments so that the ideas of the NTRP are embedded inside the projects that are being developed. The global dimension is first lining up the 369 million that were promised. And this involves the MDBs. Welcome ADB to our forum. It involves the use of IDA resources, where things are evolving in a very constructive way, where the IDA platform is now being joined across regions so that we have a global or a TRC-wide effort. GF5 efforts are underway in many countries, hopefully trying to link them together with the IDA programming effort. And of course, our partners who raise resources independently to be more successful in raising the resources, I refer to WWF, WCS and others, to apply them to the purposes of the program. And of course, supporting knowledge exchange. Where we are as a result of our Kathmandu deliberations is that every country has imbibed into its own program what we consider best practices. And continuing that process of knowledge exchange so that rather than be told what to do, to pick up from the knowledge that's on the table what is appropriate for each country, that process can continue. And of course, the biggest issue remains one of illegal trade, and therefore making a much more serious effort in actually making the poachers feel the heat. Now, the third dimension is that there will be an annual stock taking in December 2011 at high levels, hopefully ministerial levels. And we need to make sure that as we start out for the next 1 year, we have at the end of January, or at least end of January is here, maybe by end of February, clear goals that we are all trying to achieve, to which of course we'll hold ourselves accountable in a mutual framework, so that when we come to the stock taking, we have actually moved the agenda significantly forward.